Go for
So I
it.
got the approval to move forward, so I'm excited for people. I want to thank everyone for joining us today, and of course, thank Abby. Abby is in our communication specialist and also in charge of support. She's put this together, so I want to thank her. And I want to thank Sam for taking time. We're excited to hear this message. It comes at a great time. I come from a family of educators, and we're all feeling it. And bless you for that have joined us today, because I think you're going to hear a great message. So Abby's going to introduce our presenter. So Abby, you're up.
Awesome. Thanks, Greg. Yeah. So thank you all again for joining us today to hear from Sam. So Sam Bracken, he wrote the story, My Orange Duffel Bag, A Journey to Radical Change. And it's about his story growing up and being homeless at age 15. Sam managed to graduate number 11 out of 700 students from his Las Vegas high school and landed a full ride football scholarship to the Georgia Institute of Technology. The title of his graphic mini memoir self-help book comes from the fact that when he came to Georgia Tech in Atlanta, everything he owned fit in one orange duffel bag. So today, Sam will discuss how kindness from others greatly impacted his life and heavily contributed to his success. So please join me in welcoming author, speaker, and inspiration, Sam Bracken. Thanks.
Hi, everyone. How are you? Thanks for having me. Abby, thanks for that introduction. Greg, and thanks for having me. I'd love to go through a presentation that I think would be beneficial for everybody. If I can share my screen, I'll go ahead and get started. Let me see here. There we go. Boom. Share. And then we're going to play. All right. Does everybody see the screen? Can they hear me? Okay, great. So have you ever, I've thought about this a lot, and what I've realized in my life is that great achievement, even though people think they've done most of it themselves, you rarely achieve great things completely, utterly alone, especially if you're a human being, because you're brought into this world incapable of feeding yourself and doing anything, and as you grow older, you can you just get help, right? And but things aren't done typically alone. I don't know if you guys have ever seen this where people stack rocks and do wayfinding on YouTube channels, and they seem to defy gravity. It's really quite amazing. And as I look at this, and look at videos and how you do this, how long do you think this lasts? 5 minutes, couple minutes. In some cases, this must have lasted a few minutes because there's a bunch of them there, right? And in some cases, these last a while. Sometimes they don't. And it's because people loved, stacking rocks. They have a talent for it. They probably do this. They love to do it, and it's exciting for them. But things of great magnitude. This is a picture I took of Stonehenge. I was at the London Book Fair 5 years ago, and I took a day and went out to Stonehenge, and I was fascinated by Stonehenge. Each of these stones weigh between 50 and 100 tons, and they were carted there from over 400 miles away. It's estimated that Stonehenge is between 5,000 and 7,000 years old, and it's one of the most ancient structures that we've discovered on Earth. And it's amazing that some archaeologists think it took 100 years to build Stonehenge, over 100 years. I can guarantee you one thing is that someone that just had a talent for stacking rocks in his spare time didn't build Stonehenge. It took generations. It took thousands of people working over generations to build something meaningful and powerful. And my point in telling you that is that when we're trying to do great things, we always need help. We need help from other people. And it's not a bad thing to get help. And it's actually a good thing. Matter of fact, any great accomplishment most of us have reached in our lives has been because people have helped us. People have helped us in our lives, and I'm no exception. When I was in my early 20s, I went to see a clinical psychiatrist, and after months of visiting with her name was Dr. Barbara Winship, she scratched her head and she said, "Sam, I just don't get it." And I'm like, "What's going on?" She goes, "With the things that you went through as a kid, you should be dead, insane, or in prison. The trauma that you had, I've never heard quite someone have that kind of trauma. And when you're a child and you have trauma, it really is hard on you. And she goes, she didn't understand why I wasn't dead, insane, or in prison. And the thing about it was, the reason I wasn't dead, insane, or in prison was a handful of people that reached out, reached up, and reached across and helped me, just one kid, right? And the first person I'm going to talk about is my mom. Yeah, I want you to think about this story. Picture this: I'm 9 years old, and I'm playing with my friend Johnny in our front desert in Las Vegas, Nevada, in August. Now, in August in Las Vegas, it's really hot. Matter of fact, have you ever heard the expression, "It's so hot you can crack an egg and cook an egg on the sidewalk"? Well, in Vegas in August, you can like barbecue chicken and broiled brisket and brisket, cook brisket on the sidewalk. It's really hot. And my friend Johnny and I were out in our front desert, because they don't have front yards in Vegas. They have front deserts. We were playing war games, right, with our army men. You know, he had a bunch of army men, I had a bunch of army men, and we were lighting Bic lighters and, you know, playing war games, you know, just doing what 9-year-old kids do. And we had these large firecrackers. They're M80s. They're big old firecrackers. I think 4 of them make a stick of dynamite. And we bury these M80s in the ground. And at the crescendo of our battle, we light the fuse, and bam, there's this huge explosion. And to the great misfortune of Johnny and I, we realized we were playing on top of a fire anthill. And Johnny, trying to get out of the way, slipped and went boom. He fell on the fire anthill, and hundreds of fire ants crawled up on him and started stinging the crap out of him. And he starts crying, ah! And I'm like, oh, what to do? I had no idea what to do. So I scooped Johnny up like he's my bride, because I was sort of big for my age, and went running in the house. Now, no one was home except my mother. She worked 3 jobs to provide for us, and everybody else was out doing crazy things. And I laid Johnny down in the hallway. I'm like, Mom, Johnny's hurt. Boom, my mom's bedroom door swings open. She comes running down the hallway, ta-dugga-da. And my mom was sort of a big woman, hence the ta-dugga-da noise. She sees Johnny's situation. She doesn't even hesitate. And she goes to the bathroom. She gets a pair of tweezers. She goes to the kitchen. She gets a warm bowl of water, puts baking soda in it, and she sort of makes the salve. And she goes to Johnny. She starts pulling out the stingers in his body, and she puts both baking soda on his wounds. And Johnny starts to calm down, and all is good in the world. And you know, things are sort of lightening up. You know, the trauma sort of lightening up. And I look over at Johnny's, and his eyes are like this big. And I look over at my mother, and she's completely naked. And my friend's like, ugh! He totally freaked out. And to me, I'm like, oh, it's not no big deal. And I'm sure Johnny was never the same. It's just a really awkward story. But my mom never even thought of putting clothes on to help my friend Johnny. And I'm sure it impacted him terribly throughout his life. But I tell you that story because it was just really weird. I grew up in this strange, weird environment. Sort of like the Brady Bunch on an episode of Cops. You know, it was just really dysfunctional, really, really weird. My mother, who worked really, really hard in her life, is one of my first heroes. You don't have to read very far in my book to know why I love her. But she gave birth to me in very difficult situations and circumstances. And she taught me some wonderful lessons. The first thing she gave me was the gift of life. I will always be grateful for my mother and the gift of life. The second thing she taught me to do was not to judge. She goes, least be the judge, Sammy. You don't know what people go through. You have no idea what they experience and what they're going through. What you see is not who they are. So don't judge them. Be a light, not a judge. And then she taught me to work hard. And she worked really hard in her life. And she, as far as I can remember, she always had 2 or 3 jobs to provide for our family. And through that hard work, she showed me what tenacity and resiliency looked like. I'll always be grateful for my mother. The reason I told you that quick story, besides being just really weird and peculiar, was that I want you to know that we're all different, and we all are unique, and we all have different experiences. Not any of us have the same fingerprints. Not any of us have the same irises. We're all different. And this is one of the things that amazes me today. Is we argue, and a lot of people are arguing, and there's this kind of visceral kind of feeling out there in the world, and we have so much more in common. We are different. We are unique, but we all share so much in common. And if we can connect with commonalities, things can be really, really good. My challenge to us is to understand your story. Understand your own story first. How does your environment impact your life right now? Is it good? Is it bad? Is it indifferent? Understanding that's really important to be able to go throughout your life. My challenge to you is to be a light, not a judge, and to be tenacious. That is our first story and our first challenge, right? So the next thing I want to talk about is after that little experience, I sort of was exposed to, my mother was wonderful in so many ways, but one of the things that really was a challenge for her was her picker was off. And she just picked she picked men in her life that were not good. And they put us through a lot of stuff. We suffered a lot. And we didn't have a lot of value or virtue growing up. And it was just crazy. And I started doing drugs and drinking when I was 8 years old, 9 years old. My older step siblings were drug dealers and crack addicts, and they just used a lot of drugs. And I started smoking dope when I was young, and it was a crazy time. I thought that was perfectly normal, right? And as I grew up in this environment, it was very violent. I was brutally beaten. I was set on fire, used as a human dartboard, and all I knew was violence and drug addiction and all sorts of crazy things. And one of the things I started doing to sort of manage my stress and anxiety was I started running everywhere. When I felt anxious, in our home, when you felt anxious, you just got your butt kicked. It just was really weird. It was a real weird, kind of chaotic, violent environment. And I'd feel anxious and I'd go running, and it made me feel better. And so I got good at running. And then the other thing I was good at was when I was 9 or 10 years old, my stepfather took me to a football tryout, and I started playing American football. And as I did that, what I realized very quickly was I can put a bunch of pads on and a helmet, and I can get my butt kicked at home, and I can go out on this field, and as long as I keep the rules, I can annihilate people and take out all my anger and vengeance on other people, and be praised for it. Like, oh, you're an amazing football player. This is awesome. So I'm like 10, 11 years old, and I start getting good at running, and start getting at football, and but I also do these other things that my family does, because that's what I know. The drug use, the crazy, I had no curfew, no nothing. I just did whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted, and to whomever I wanted. And I get to junior high, and I start getting some recognition and praise for my practice. I was on the Woodbury Junior High track team. This is a picture of me when I was 12 years old, 13 years old. I'm 6'2", 190 pounds. I'm the #1 person on our track team in the 440, the 880, and the mile. And I'm big, but I'm big. It's really weird to see a big kid run that stuff. And I also throw the shot put and discus. Most people imagine that I would throw the shot put and discus, but they didn't know I could run. And I loved it. My grades were suffering terribly. I was barely passing grade to grade. I was in special ed, and was really basically a reflection of my environment. And one day after track practice, my older stepbrother picked me up in this 1976 mustard yellow Gremlin. And he had just got a bunch of money because he was at his girlfriend's house, and he got this bright idea of getting a pipe and putting some rocks in it and putting some gunpowder in it and lighting this gunpowder. And he thought they would shoot the rocks out of the pipe like a rocket, and it blew his hand off. And he lied about it on an insurance claim, and he got $40,000. Now, what do you think in this kind of crazy, chaotic, drug-filled kind of crazy environment? What do you think my older stepbrother, Lenny, what do you think he did with that money? Well, he bought this Gremlin, and he went from, do you think he got a save for college to get his education? No, no one in my family and in my generations of family ever had went to college. Do you think maybe he, became a member of the Better Business Bureau and opened a franchise, or, maybe he, did some entrepreneurial things? No, he didn't do any of that. He went from like small-time drug dealer to medium-sized drug dealer. And he was the same older sibling that had set me on fire and used me as a human dartboard and repeatedly just beat the crap out of me. And he picked me up after track practice, and you didn't say no to him. And he took me to an abandoned construction site and basically force fed me all manner of drugs. And I'm not going to go into the detail. I don't need to, but I was in trouble. I was not well, and probably should have been hospitalized, but I wasn't. I went straight home. I walked right past my parents and went to bed for 2 or 3 days, and no one missed me. No one even cared. I was one of those invisible kids living in the shadows, and just no one even cared, nor even noticed. So I go back to school, and after school I go to track practice, and I got my running shoes on and was stretched out and started running. And I went to Woodbury Junior High in Las Vegas, Nevada, and behind Woodbury Junior High is a grass field, and it's still there today, 35 years later. And I started warming up and running a warm-up lap around this track at Woodbury Junior High. And about halfway through that warm-up lap, I collapsed in the dirt. And on my hands and knees, heaving for breath, I had an epiphany. I had some huge change in my life. And I had this realization that if I kept doing what my family was doing, I was going to be just like them. And they were not good people. They did not do good things, and they were miserable. And somehow in the deep recesses of my heart and soul, I decided that I wasn't going to be like them, not like them, that I had a choice. I figured out that I had a choice not to be like them. Now, granted, I had no idea how I was going to not be like them. I just knew I didn't want to be like them. I knew that being mean wasn't good, that being kind was better. And on my hands and knees on that dirt track, I got a bold vision. And I thought, well, I'm good at football. I want to play in the NFL, and I'm terrible at school, but I want to be a lawyer. And because they had in Vegas at the time, lawyers had all the money. They made all the money, drove the nice cars, had the beautiful wives, and all that kind of stuff. I'm like, yeah, I want to be a lawyer and a pro football player. That's it. And interesting enough, that bold vision sort of ignited something inside of me. I was pushed by pain and pulled by vision to change. I didn't like the way I was raised and what I was exposed to. And I had this bold vision of the future that I wanted to be somebody different and do something different. So I got to work. I just got to work. And I went from B's and C's in 8th grade, D's, to straight A's in 9th grade. And I would spend all my extra time in the library. I was way behind in school, so I'd have to study 2 and 3 times longer than other students to get better grades. And then when I wasn't in the library studying, I was in the weight room, and I was running, and I was getting ready to be a great football player. And it was in this kind of environment that I was exposed to a football huddle. And a football huddle is a wonderful thing, because in the huddle, was the first time I ever felt value as a human being, was in a football huddle. As a kid, being repeatedly abandoned and abused, my self-esteem was really bad. But in a football huddle, because I could do certain things, and with my body and with physicality, I could sack the quarterback anytime I wanted. And if I ran with the football, I'd get a first down anytime I wanted, or a touchdown. And it was in the huddle that I learned that I had value. Interesting thing about the huddle, differences are good in the huddle. The color of your skin doesn't matter in the huddle. Your religious orientation doesn't matter. Whether you're rich or poor doesn't matter. Whether you're LGBTQ or not doesn't, like whether you're gay or straight doesn't matter. None of that stuff matters. What matters is you put your differences aside, you use your differences of working together to accomplish a goal. And it changed my life, the huddle. And to this day, people in my huddles still change my life. One of the first people I met in my huddle was a man by the name of Brian Cross. He had played football in high school and was a high school All-American. He played Division I college football, and because of a series of bad mistakes and poor judgment, had failed out. It looked like he was going to be a high round draft pick in the NFL, and he had failed out. And I met him. He was really overweight and trying to put his life back together. And he would pick me up wherever I was at, and he'd take me to the YMCA and play basketball for hours. And then on Sundays, he would he would play catch with me, and he tried to teach me everything that he knew. And he said, Sam, I think you have a chance. I think you have a chance to do really well in high school and go on to play college in the pros. And he said, but I got to tell you, you've had a hard go of it. And he goes, I want you to understand something. Change starts in your heart, not in your head. You have to be open to learning, open to humble and open. Your heart needs to be open. And then it moves to your head. When you open your heart, it opens your head. And then you can think differently. And I'll never forget Brian. He believed in me, taught me that I needed to have an open heart, to have an open mind to continue my journey to change. Now, the reason I told you that quick story was I want you to know that freedom runs deep. The freedom to choose runs deep. You have the choice to think, even though when you don't think you have choice, you do. You have the choice. Now, there's always a trade-off for your choices, but the freedom to choose runs deep. All you have to do is think about taking away that freedom, and people fight like mad. They fight like mad to get that freedom back. It runs deep. I believe freedom runs at a molecular level in our bodies, and we are free to act for ourselves and not be acted upon. That we have that freedom. So with that freedom, my question to you is, where are you going? Because if you don't know where you're going, you'll never know when you get there. And a bold vision can pull us some benefit or some outcome that we want in the future, can pull us through so much in the near term. Like if you have a bold vision and you have a clear picture of the future, you can almost endure anything in the near term. And this is what happened to me. As a freshman in high school, I started doing really, really well, and things started changing for me. But what I want to challenge you in this story is to live outside the comfort zone and to create a long view. When I was in 8th grade, all my friends were dope smoking hippie kids. That day in the dirt, when I was on my hands and knees and a bold vision came up and I decided that I wanted to play pro football and be a lawyer, I have not done drugs or tasted alcohol since that day. And so I lost all my friends in 8th grade. I had no friends. Fortunately for me, nerds, as they called them back in the day, nerds are kind and they're gracious. And I discovered that if I hang around smart people, I get smarter. And they were very accepting of me. And even though I had this reputation and this history of chaos and drug use and confusion, that was very uncomfortable for me. I had to live outside my comfort zone to do that. And sometimes when we're talking about significant change in life, we need to live outside the comfort zone. And the first thing to do there is to create a long view, and that helps you live outside the comfort zone. So that's my challenge to you. And live with purpose, live with power and purpose and meaning. Most people don't pay the price to live with purpose. It takes some effort. Now, what I want to do now is transition to a third story. As I make these changes in 9th grade, I play freshman, JV, and varsity football as a 9th grader. We go to state. I get in the state championship football game. I get to carry the ball a few times and get smashed for like a 1-yard gain. I'm 13 years old. And I'm straight A student. I play basketball. I run track, and colleges start looking at me because I'm big. I'm a big kid. Now I'm 6'4". I'm over 200 pounds, and I'm just a big kid. I can move. I wasn't really super fast, but I had a motor that I could just move, and I was a good athlete, and I was a straight A student. I started getting a lot of attention, and you think, well, the hard work is paying off. Well, one day, excuse me, one day after track practice, I come home, and my mom says, "Hey, Sammy, we need to talk." And I'm like, "What's up, Mom?" She goes, "You need to sit down." I'm like, what's going on?" She goes, "You need to sit down." I'm like, "Okay." And I had cold chills run up my spine. I'm like, "What's going on here?" And she goes, "I'm done." I'm like, "What do you mean you're done?" She goes, "I'm done." She had just gone through a bitter divorce with my stepfather, Leroy. And she was hanging around a bunch of motorcycle gang members and bikers. And she said, "I'm done." Sissy was just made a ward of the state, and she had to go to Idaho to live with her grandparents. That was my younger sister. My younger brother moved in with my my stepsister and her husband who were drug dealers. And my mom said, you got to find a place to live because I can't provide for you anymore. It was a very terrible time for me. I was homeless, and I didn't know what to do. And the way I managed stress as a kid, like when I was younger, was I just ran. So I got these combat boots on. I got the Salvation Army. I got a pair of shorts on, and I went running in the southern Nevada desert. Looked just like this. And I ran for hours and hours, and I was full of despair, full of despair. Where was I going to live? How was I going to get to and from school, to and from practices? Where I was going to eat? Who was going to take me in? And as I ran for hours, as the sun sort of faded beyond the southern Nevada mountains, I was running down a shallow sand dune, and I tripped and I fell in the dirt. This time, second time I was in the dirt. This time I looked up to heaven and I said, God, what am I supposed to do? I wasn't raised in any kind of religious home or anything. And I just was so full of despair, and I had no idea what I was going to do. And I got this distinctive impression. Call Brent. Brent was my best friend in high school. He was 6'5" and he had this red afro. I love this picture of him because he really looks goofy. And so I walk home, I call Brent. I'm like, hey, dude, mom's just kicked me out. I don't know what to do. And he goes, that's okay. Just come live with us. And I'm like, you don't even live with your parents. You live with your aunt and uncle. And I'm like, come on, you have no idea. You don't get it. I'm up creek without a paddle. And he goes, you don't get it. Pack your crap and come live with us. So I put everything I owned in this little orange duffel bag I got from football camp. And I went and I moved in with my friend Brent and his family, the Langfords, Harvey and Arlene Langford. And things were different in their household. The first thing that I noticed was the fridge was always full. And because we never had food in our house. I was one of those free lunch kids, right? Always getting free lunch. And my mom would go to like a buffet and get a big purse and put everything in the buffet and in the purse and walk out. And then that's what we'd eat for the week. It was crazy. And but at Harvey and Arlene's, they would gather together in the evening, right? They would partake of food. They called it dinner. Dinner. And Harvey's like, hey man, we have this storage area in the back here. We got, like 100-year supply of food there. And, anytime you want some food, just go back there and hit it. And I'm like, to this day, I think I ate my weight in Spam and Swiss cheese. And Harvey's like, well, I was about 15, 16. And Harvey's like, well, do you have any money? And I'm like, no. He goes, do you have any skill? I said, no. And he goes, well, do you want to go on dates or anything and have a good time? And I said, well, sure. And he goes, well, so Harvey's like, well, here's what I want you to do. I want you to fix my back fence. And so I tried to fix their fence, and I redid their roof. And, he paid me like $10 an hour, and I had no skills, and I couldn't do anything. But he made me work to get money because he was trying to teach me a lesson, right? I wrecked their car. And I come home, I'm like, Harvey, I wrecked your car. Where do you want me to take the butt kicking? And he's like, butt kicking? What are you even talking about? And I'm like, well, I just wrecked the car. You got to take it out of my hide or something. I got to pay the fiddler. He goes, we're just going to get it fixed, So don't do that next time. Be careful. And I was like completely amazed. And living with the Langfords, I learned that life has meaning and it has purpose. And most importantly, I learned what normal looked like. You see, a functioning normal family loves one another. They listen to one another. They care for one another. They have empathy. They're good to one another. They're not beating each other up and doing crazy things and stealing from you. And I'm like, wow, so that's what normal looks like. That's amazing. And the reason I tell you that story is because oftentimes our struggles make us stronger. There is great benefit to struggle, right? If we don't struggle, we don't learn. If we don't struggle with our muscles and exercise, we don't get stronger or faster. When we don't struggle through relationships, they get better. If you maintain respect and dignity, and then your relationships get stronger. Everything gets stronger through our struggles if we can keep the right mindset. My question to you today is, have you learned to leverage your trials, your tragedies, your trauma for your good? Because they are there for your good. It's what you make out of it that matters. My challenge to you is to learn from your trials, get better from your trials, and don't be bitter. Be better, not bitter. This is really important, because if you don't learn from your trials, and if you do something and you don't learn, you make a mistake and it's a trial, and you don't learn from that and you repeat that mistake, you're just going to go into a black hole of nothingness. It's in learning and course correcting that we get better. And betterness is really, really important to happiness. You don't have happiness without getting betterness. And if you don't get better, if you're not trying to improve, you're shrinking. And that's my challenge. Learn from everything. Here's how we become better, not bitter. So one of the things I did many years ago, I had a big black garbage bag, and I was speaking to a bunch of kids in St. George who had had a hard go of it. And I asked the kids in the room, I said, one of the things I do is I open this garbage bag and I say, okay, tell me something bad that wasn't fair that happened to you. It was terrible. And we'll put it in this bag. And someone said, well, I got a B when I deserved an A. And I'm like, okay. And someone else said, well, I love this girl and she didn't love me back. And I'm like, oh, that's terrible. And then all of a sudden the tone took a serious notion. And then people's like, my parents got divorced. And I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. And then one little girl raised her hand. She was 12. She said, my mother started shooting me up with heroin when I was 10. And I just lost it. I completely cried. And I'm like, I am so sorry, young lady. I'm so sorry that happened to you. Then I got my composure, and then I tried to teach this object lesson. All of us have bags, and oftentimes we'll carry this bag around, a garbage bag, and when bad things happen to us, we fill it in this bag. But the problem is we carry it along, and then we say, do you remember when you open the bag and you dig it all up and you said, do you remember when so-and-so did such and such to me? And then they wonder why their life stinks. Well, it's because there's nothing but crap in this bag. And so what I encourage people to do is to take that bag and to throw it away and to pick a bag. For me, it was an orange duffel bag. And I filled my orange duffel bag with hopes and dreams and hard work. You can have a yellow backpack or purple purse. It doesn't matter. But pick something to put your hope in and your faith in to move forward. It makes all the difference. But there's always some opposition, right? So I'm homeless at 15. I go live with Brent's family. My last 2 years of high school, I'm bouncing around from family to family, sleeping on furniture, working in hotel rooms, and working in hotels in Las Vegas and trying to play sports. And I managed to do really well. I'm all state in football, all state in track, the captain of our football team on the National Honor Society. I'm being recruited to play sports in big Power 5 schools, and I get appointments to all the academies, Air Force, Army, Navy, and I have all this kind of stuff, and my future looked really, really bright. And I decided that I was going to go to BYU, and they didn't. Right at the last minute, for some odd reason, they pulled my scholarship, and I had enough academic credits and other things that I just would go on an academic scholarship. So I went up to BYU to work all summer. And this is when Jim McMahon was a quarterback, and Steve Young and these guys. And I ran pass patterns and worked all summer at BYU. And then I came home to play in a high school all-star game. And this kid named Nick Bruno during practice dove into my knee and blew my knee out. And I'm like, I worked so hard and had so many opportunities to play college football. And I had this knee injury and I didn't know what to do. Fortunately, I met these two guys, Dr. Welch and Dave Denham. Dave was Dr. Welch's physical therapist. And Dr. Welch said, he looked at my knee and he got it he got it fixed. And I stayed out of school that fall. And Dave worked with me in rehab, and I got back to normal. And these guys really cared for me. And Dr. Welch said, Sam, where are you going to school? I said, well, I don't know now. And at the time, UNLV wasn't really keeping a lot of the NCAA rules. And they said, well, we can get you, $3,000 a month to go to school, and you can get a truck, and we'll get you a job making $15-20 an hour. You don't have to do anything. And I'm like, oh, let's just do that, But at the time, it wasn't the academic powerhouse it is today. Back in those days, it had one accredited major, hotel administration. And Dr. Welch finds out that I'm going to go to UNLV, and he says, Sam, I need to meet with you. So he brings me in his office. He's from the South, and he's like, I heard you're going to UNLV. And I said, yeah. And he said, Why on earth would you do that? You were a straight A student. Why would you go to UNLV? And I said, Dr. Welch, it's not like I have a lot of choices here. All the schools that were interested in me when I got hurt in this all-star game, they all went away. And he said, son, you always have a choice. He goes, I want you to write down on one piece of paper all the honors and awards you had in high school. And then I'm going to write a letter and I'm going to send it out to coaches I know. I know Rex Dockery at Texas Tech and Vince Dooley at Georgia and Bill Curry at Georgia Tech. And we sent out letters to 30 schools. And a bunch of letters came back, about 20, saying that something like this: Sam, dear Sam, we got your letter. It sucks to be you. Too bad, so sad. There's no scholarships here. And then I got 10 letters that requested game film. So we sent the game films out. About 9 of those things came back and they said, hey, dear Sam, we watched your game films and too bad, sucks to be you, and too bad, so sad. There's nothing here. But I got one call from Ken Blair, Coach Ken Blair. And I don't even know how he found me. I was popping around and I got on the phone with Ken Blair and he said, hey, is this Sam Bracken? I go, yeah. He goes, hey, this is Coach Ken Blair. I'm the defense coordinator at Georgia Tech, and we watch your game films. And I was ready for him to say, and you suck, too bad, so sad. And he said, we like what we see. We want you to come to Atlanta. So I got on the plane and went to Atlanta and met Bill Curry there. And Bill Curry was in his first year of coaching. Now, Bill Curry he was a legendary NFL player. He was the president of the NFL Players Association. He'd won 3 Super Bowl championships, and he was an all-pro, and he was in his first year of college coaching. And he's a powerful man. He's just an amazing human being. And he had me in his den, and I saw all the Super Bowl rings and all the pictures of all these guys in the pros. And he looked me straight in the eye and he said, Sam, why should I give you a scholarship? And I looked him straight in the eye back and I said, Coach, I said, I promise you, if you'll give me a chance, you'll never regret it. And then he got this beautiful smile on his face. And he said, that's good enough for me. You got a full ride football scholarship. And I went home and I packed everything I owned in an orange duffel bag. And I moved to Atlanta, Georgia, not knowing a single soul. Now, why did I tell you that story? Well, because setbacks become stepping stones for great achievements. I can't tell you why Nick Bruno dove into my knee, except for it sometimes crap happens. But I can tell you that I was supposed to go to Georgia Tech, and it changed the trajectory of my life. So my question to you is, how will you accomplish your dreams despite your setbacks? Everybody has setbacks. Everyone suffers. Everyone has pain. Everyone has disappointment, but not everyone responds in a positive way. My challenge to you is to work hard, but be flexible, because you never know what the good Lord has in store for you. So I pack everything and I go to Georgia Tech. At the end of my freshman year, I'm all ACC Rookie of the Year team and outside linebacker. And I'm a Dean's List student. Coach Curry brings me into his office and he goes, we're so glad you're here. I'm like, you're glad? I'm like, we're playing people, we're playing in front of 100,000 people. And I'm getting like all this recognition for being a student athlete. And they think, coach says, we think you'll be a top 10 round draft pick and you'll play in the pros. And I said, well, good. And he goes, barring injury, life will be good for you. And I'm like, that's awesome. And my future was really bright. All that hard work was finally paying off. And 6 months later, I blew both my shoulders out and my career was over. And I'm like, why did this happen to me? Why? And I have these surgeries, and the first surgery, they have to, so I meet with the doctor and I say, what do I need to do to be able to play football again? He goes, son, it's going to be hard. We have to completely reconstruct both your shoulders. And so it took me about 2 minutes to make that decision to do it. And I had these surgeries 6 weeks apart. And I wake up from surgery, my arm's strapped to my body. I can't even breathe without pain. Tubes are coming out of my shoulders, blood's everywhere, all sorts of crazy things. I'm like, what did they do to me? Dr. Almond's like, well, you had big bone chips in there and you had all this problem. We took big titanium screws and we screwed down in there and everything. And ironically, not one person from my family was in the hospital with me, but Coach Curry was with me. And he said, Sam, you have your scholarship, whether you play or not. He was there. He loved me for no good reason. And Don and Joan were there. Now, I met Don and Joan the first Sunday I was in Atlanta. it took me 2 hours to find a church to go to. And I met them at church, and they invited me home from church for brunch. And to this day, they say, we invited Sam home for brunch, and he never left. And I remember Don was an executive working in Atlanta, and he said, if you need anything, let us know, and we'll be there for you. And they became my surrogate parents. They just loved me for no good reason. And they listened and loved me. And Joan was at the hospital because she didn't want me to feel alone. And it was amazing to me that people could care for me so much, because I'd been raised in such an environment where people just didn't care. And 6 weeks later, after I could barely move my right arm, I had my left arm operated on, and I'm like, same exact thing. I wake up, blood's everywhere. What did they do to me? Well, they did the same thing they did this one, that they did the other one, and you're going to be hosed. And it finally hit me. I fell deep into depression, and my roommates, they said, Bracken, we know what you need. You need a road trip. I'm like, oh, I need a road trip. Yeah, and that was just code for, Bracken needs to be the designated driver, and we need to go party in Destin, Florida. So I convinced them that 13 of my buddies and I would get in my friend Andy's van. We drive to Destin, Florida, stay in this beautiful resort. We get one room for the college economies of scale, right? And because we're not there for the room, we're there for the extracurricular activities and the fun time with the hot looking co-eds and chicas and honeys and all this kind of stuff. And my buddies are playing, outside this resort is a big, beautiful pool with a volleyball area and the Atlantic Ocean, much like this picture. And I sit under this tree in a lounge chair in absolutely humiliating pain. I'd lost 30 pounds because of atrophy in my muscles. And I watched as my friends, as the day went on, they started having more and more fun, and they were just loving life. And the tide came in, tide went out. And I thought to myself, sitting in this lounge chair, my life sucks. It can't possibly get any worse than it is right now. And my advice to you is to never say that, because at that very moment, a flock of seagulls flew over my head, and they pooped all over me. Got poop in my eye, poop in my chest, and I'm screaming, ah! And what do your friends do when something like that happens? They're like, Bracken, you're a pooping stick, and they make fun of me, and they started doing all this kind of stuff, and that day became a defining moment. I'm like, you know what? I can feel sorry for myself all I want. Woe is me. I was homeless. I was abused as a kid. I had all these unfortunate injuries. My dream of playing in the pros and all this stuff's at risk. I may never play again. And I went back to Atlanta. I got to work. I started getting up at 4:30 a.m. and going to the student athletic complex, and I'd swim for an hour. I could barely move my arms, so I looked completely pathetic. And then I'd come back, run across the stadium. I'm run across the campus, and I'd climb the fence of Bobby Dodd Stadium on Grant Field, and I'd run the stadium stairs. Took me another hour. And then I'd go to breakfast. I'd been working out for 2.5 hours. Most of my teammates were just getting up, going to breakfast. And then I'd go to school. And then I'd go to rehab, and then I'd go to weightlifting, and then I'd go to tutoring, because at Georgia Tech, it's really hard academically. If you didn't go to tutoring, you just failed everything. And I went back to hard work that my mother taught me. And after 3 months, I couldn't even bench the bar. And it was the first time in my life where hard work didn't get it done. And I went to Coach Curry in great sadness, and I said, I don't know what to do. No one wants to come back from these injuries more than I do, but I just don't know what to do. And he listened to me and heard me out. And he said, Sam, here's what I want you to do. I want you to go to the bookstore, get a 3-ring binder, put 4 tabs in that binder, and I want you to write down where you're at right now. Take a cold, brutal look at yourself in the mirror. Take a self-inventory. And then I want you to turn the page in each tab, and I want you to write down where you want to be in an hour and in a year from then. Where do you want to be physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually? Those were the 4 categories. And then I want you to turn the page in each category, and I want you to write down how you're going to do it. You need an action plan. And I want you to turn the page in each category and write down a compelling motivation. And I did exactly what he said. I was too ignorant not to do it. And I wrote down there that I wanted to come back. I wanted to start on a really good football team, and I wanted to be all conference, and I wanted to be, on a nationally ranked team, and have all sorts of athletic and academic honors. I wanted to raise my GPA so I could graduate from Tech with honors. I had all these goals in there. And I read that book every day. And I reminded myself of where I was going, why I was going there, and how I was going to get there. And Coach Curry said, I'm here to help you. If you need anything, I'm here to help you. And your coaches are here. and your teachers are here, your professors are here. We're all here to help you. And you guys, everything I wrote in that book, every single thing came to fruition. I want you to know that it takes guts to go after your hopes and dreams. I came back from those surgeries and played at a very high level and had great experiences. My question to you is, who will you believe in? And this is where we really connect to the Hope Squad. There's so many kids out there, so many people who feel alone and abandoned. And I had people that believed in me, and it made all the difference. People have believed in you. My question to you is not who's believed in you. My question is, who will you believe in? Because it will make all the difference in their life. My challenge is to consistently review what, why, and how you're going to accomplish your goals, and to surround yourself with positive, powerful people. It makes all the difference. Makes all the difference. I came back, I gained 100 pounds. I became an offensive guard, OG. Yeah, for you, not an original gangster, but offensive guard. I started and was all conference and played on some great football teams, man. We had the best record we'd had at Georgia Tech in 25 years. We had the championship caliber games. I had my own football card. I had a lot of great opportunities. And I had the chance to play in the pros, but I chose to do some other things, to serve in other countries and in a service capacity. But instead of being dead, insane, or in prison, I have my own beautiful family. This is a picture of them. My son Bo, who looks like Jesus with his long hair, and his wife Stephanie. They have a son McCrae, who's 2 years old. Ben and Tawny. They have a son Waylon, who's 3 months old. My daughter Hannah, my wife Kim, and my son Jacob. I'm blessed beyond measure, and it was because of a handful of people. I get to take credit. I get to take credit for what I did. I kept focused and I kept working, but the handful of people in my life made all the difference. This is my favorite picture of my mother. And you might say, why is that your favorite picture of your mother? And I said, well, because what you don't see is in the background is a 4-wheel drive international pickup truck where she dropped the transmission out of that truck by herself. And then she's taking a break, hitting the Colonel Sanders here, corner on the cob there, because when she was done, she put a new transmission in that pickup truck. She gave me the gift of life. She taught me to be a light, not a judge. And she showed me the gift. She showed me how to live a life of resiliency and tenacity. I'll be always thankful for my mother. Brian Cross taught me to open my heart and open my mind. Brent's family took me in, helped me find purpose and meaning. Dr. Welch helped me narrow my focus and get a scholarship to Georgia Tech. Bill Curry gave me a chance, and Don and Joan loved me for no good reason. And it changed my life. Completely changed the trajectory of my life. 2 weeks ago, I was in Atlanta, Georgia, where we celebrated the 10-year anniversary of the Orange Duffel Bag Foundation. We've had 2,000 kids go through our after-school coaching program, and we've changed the trajectory of those children. In foster care in Atlanta, in Georgia, 14% of kids graduate from high school. The kids that have gone through our Orange Duffel Bag coaching program, 87% of them graduated from high school and 40% are in college. And it just was completely remarkable to me that they have had those kinds of achievements. And we like to say in the Orange Duffel Bag Foundation, pick your path and pack your bag and be that one to help just one. And that's what we've done. We've been that one to just help that one, repeated 2,000 times in Georgia, and it's made the difference. Now, what I'm going to ask you guys to do is to be that one to help just one. Now, I'm not going to ask you to do everything that everybody did for me. My mom, Brian Cross, Dr. Welch and Dave and Bill Curry. Just do one of them. Love someone for no good reason. Teach someone to open their heart, to open their brain, right? Believe in someone when they don't believe in them. People matter, right? And I had a handful of people that let me know that I mattered to them, even though in my family I didn't matter. And it changed my trajectory. And my challenge to you is to do that same for others. You will find greater joy and greater happiness and fulfillment by doing that thing than you have ever found in your life. That's all I have.
Wow, Sam, that was Incredible. I am so inspired by you, by the journey you've taken, by your foundation, My Orange Duffel Bag Foundation. Does anyone have any questions? You can drop them in the chat. You can use the Q&A feature. We've got about 8 minutes left in this webinar for you to ask any questions that you have for Sam. But I mean, that was such an incredible story. You've been through so much and you've inspired so many people. It's really inspiring.
On my YouTube channel, Sam Bracken 67 on my YouTube channel, there's a lot of videos. There's coaching videos. There's gut checks. There's hundreds of videos. You can go and get more detail and more stories. I had to get through this pretty quickly today just to get through my presentation, but it's been an honor.
Sam and Abby, maybe I can just jump in real quick, and that is, your message is what Hope Squad kids are doing every day, reaching out to their peers and being that significant one to help them. So, thank you very much. We have 40 or 50,000 young people out there every day who get out of bed wondering, how can I help? And then these amazing Hope Squad advisors that are doing so much to help the Hope Squad members. You've been a great example to us. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you to all the people that are doing that. All of you advisors, all of you students, like there's nothing better you can do. You'll save someone's life.
We do have one question in the chat. Do you have any resources that they can use for their health class?
Well, my book, My Orange Duffel Bag, A Journey to Radical Change, that book is designed with powerful questions and maps and instructional stuff through it all. So the book can help in health class. And I have two other books. One's called 7 Principles for a Stress-Free Life. That's about being mindful. And then that has a bunch of audios about Unwind Before You Unravel. That teaches you the concept of mindfulness. Those are all found on Amazon, on YouTube. On Amazon or Audible. And then I have a book called Guts, Find Your Purpose, Live from Passion. And I'm working on my 4th book called Into the Clear. But so I would say the Orange Duffel Bag book was written in a very unusual way. And you could use that book to guide any kind of instruction in classrooms.
Perfect. And then another question, how do you approach someone who is struggling?
With love and tenderness, and listen. And I listen, and I don't talk a lot. Today I talked a lot, and I don't like doing that much, but I listen and I try to understand, try to put myself in their scenario. And sometimes, people don't even need to be talked to. You just need to be beside them. Just showing up can make a difference in someone's life, especially someone with really struggling around mental health issues and self-injurious behavior. If you can just be there for them and let them know that they matter to you, that they matter, and just listen to them. You don't have to solve their problems. You don't, but you can love them, and you can listen to them, and you can understand them. And when you do that, you earn the right to challenge them. You earn the right to push them and to help them. See, helping me was really messy. Like, it was really hard. Like, if I was myself today trying to help me, I'm like, I don't know if I could do it, because it was messy. I was messed up, and but these people had patience, and they just loved me, and they just saw good in me, and they just never relented.
Perfect. It doesn't look like we have any other questions as of now. I'm going to drop your website in the chat so people can go right to your website. Do you have any final messages for our attendees today?
Yeah, it's probably my favorite message here would be one of gratitude for that which you do to help so many. You can make a difference in someone else's life. And we're all are born, we all die, and we all live. And you may not remember how much money you make or how many material possessions you amassed, but you will remember the kind of people that you've helped and that have helped you. And be mindful of trying to help someone. Just try to make someone's day every day, and you'll be surprised at how much that helps you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Sam. I know it's so invigorating to hear your story. So grateful for you. So thankful to have you join us today and be part of our Hope Squad family now. And for everybody who's watching, we did record this webinar, so we will have it on our YouTube probably in a few days. You're more than welcome to share every resource we have out and about. But thanks again, Sam. We're so grateful for you and so thankful to everybody that's helped you as well.
Well, thanks for having me. Have a great one.
Absolutely. You too.
See you
And
guys.
everybody have a great rest of your day. And we'll see you next time. The webinar will be on our advisor portal, and we'll also share it in our newsletter, the link, so you can see it there. All right. Everyone have a great rest of your day and rest of your week, and we'll see you again soon. Bye.
Thanks, Abby.